Okay, class, today we're going to be talking about finding slope and rate of change. But first, let's go over some vocabulary. A slope is also known as the rate of change. Now, another way that you guys have seen slope is probably with one variable when you have the equation y equals mx plus b. And that variable would be m. It is also known as something over something, and it starts with the r. And that would be rise over run. Now, these are the three vocabulary words that we use to refer to slope. Now, parallel lines. Parallel lines are two lines that would never intersect. So, when these two lines don't intersect, that means they're always the same distance from each other at all times. Perpendicular lines, on the other hand, those are lines that do intersect, but they do intersect to make a 90-degree angle, which we also call a right angle. Now, we're going to learn something about their slopes, but I'm sure maybe you've seen it before, that it has to do with the negative reciprocal. Now, rate of change. A rate of change, it tells you how much one quantity changes on average relatively to another one. Alrighty. So now let's look at the graphs. Now, how do you find the slope of line? Now, let's do this in words. The slope m of a non-vertical line is the ratio of blank change, which is the rise. So if you're rising, you're going up and down, what kind of change is that? That would be a vertical change. To the blank change, which is the run. When you're running, that means you're going sideways, so that right there would be the horizontal change. So when you look at this graph here, your rise is considered your vertical change and your run is considered your horizontal. So this is why you've seen this formula before. That right there is rise over run. So the formula for rise over run, and it's something you've seen before, is y2 minus y sub 1 over x2 over x sub 1. So let's go ahead and move on to the next problem. So here we're finding the slope. In order to find the slope, and they give you the 2 points, we're going to go ahead and label them. Now, even though they're labeled to the side, I like to label mine on top. So that's x1, y1. This is x2, y2. The formula is here, so just keep an eye on it. It's y2, so that would be 7, minus my y1, which is 3. And then your denominator is your x2, which is 6, minus your x1, which is 1. Now 7 minus 3 is 4, 6 minus 1 is 5. So my slope here is 4/5. So we've seen that formula, you should feel comfortable using it. Moving on to the next thing, we should be able to classify them. Now, the slope of a line indicates whether the line blinks from left to right, whether it rises from left to right, whether it falls from left to right, or whether it is horizontal or vertical. So these are the 4 different types of lines that you have, and they're right there in the bottom also. So if we have a line that increases, it has a positive slope, which in other words, it rises from left to right. But if you have a line who is going down, negative slope, then that one is falls from left to right. Then you also have one that goes sideways. This is a 0 slope. Kind of look at it as it makes a Z. That's when you would be able to make the Z off of it if you still don't remember what makes something a 0 slope and undefined. And that one right there is horizontal. The other one is the undefined, and that one you can make a U from it. That is undefined, and it's a slope that goes up and down, so it's vertical. Now, so we need to classify the following lines Whether they fall, they're horizontal, they rise, or they're vertical. So let's go ahead and do the first one. Like I told you, I like to label them. So I'm going to go ahead and label them x1, y1, x2, y2. My y2 is 3 minus my y1, which is a negative 2. So we go ahead and put that in parentheses. Make sure you don't make any mistakes right there. Then we have 1 minus a negative 6. So the 3 minus a negative 2, that becomes a plus sign in the middle. So that would be a 5. And then the same thing happens in the bottom where those two negative signs become a positive, and it's 5. So my slope here is 5/7. Now that slope is greater than 0, so that tells you that the line is rises, which means that it's positive. That's why it rises. Now for part B here, let's go ahead and label the points again. We have x1, y1, x2, y2. And we're going to start off with my y2, which is 2, minus my y1, which is a negative 1. So don't forget the parentheses there. And then we have my x2, which is 2, and my x1, which is 2. Now, on top, those negative become a positive, so it's a plus 1, so that's a 3. But 2 minus 2 is a 0. So my slope is 3/0. Can you divide 3 by 0? The answer is no. So this is why it is undefined. Now if it's undefined, remember that means that the slope should be going up and down, which gives you a vertical line. So you're going to have different types of lines. Now make sure that you refer back to your notes while you're doing your work in case you have questions. So let's go ahead and check for understanding. So without using graphing it, tell whether the line of these 2 points rises, falls, is horizontal, or is vertical. Take about 15 seconds, set it up, make sure you use the formula. So you should be working on it. Make sure you use that formula right there. Should have done the labeling. Hopefully this is what you guys got, 2/4, just reduces to a 1/2. So my slope is greater than 0, which makes it be a positive, which means that it rises. It's also positive. All right, moving on. Now you have two different kinds of lines. You could either have parallel or perpendicular lines. So let's consider the two different non-vertical lines. You have the first picture here of line 1 and line 2. Now the lines are parallel if and only if they have the answer is same slope. So make sure that they have the same slope. So that means that M1 should equal to M2. That's why they never intersect. Now for perpendicular lines, the lines are perpendicular only if and only if the slopes are negative reciprocals. Now please keep in mind that reciprocal is when you flip something around. So basically what happens here is M1 equals -1 over M2. So when you multiply these two together, it should give you a -1. A quick example right now would be 2/3. The reciprocal of 2/3, you flip it around, it's 3/2, but it would have to be a -3/2. So if I were to actually multiply these guys together, that's a -6/6, which equals the -1 that it's specifying right there. So that makes these two slopes perpendicular. So let's go ahead and try this, and we have one set, and when you're classifying them as parallel perpendicular, it's a possibility that it could be neither also. So it says tell whether the lines are parallel perpendicular, and they give you the two equations, the two sets of lines, the 2 points for each line that you have to graph. So we start labeling the first one, x1, y1, x2, y2. We fold them in. It is 5 minus a negative 1. And then we have 2 minus a negative 3. Top, it becomes a plus. 5 plus 1 is 6. And 2 plus 3 is 5. So it's 6 over 5. Now let's go ahead and work on the second one. Let's label the points x1, y1, x2, y2. And then we'll put them in. And it says it is 1 minus a negative 4. And in the bottom we have negative 3 minus 3. So that becomes a plus, so 1 plus 4 is 5. Negative 3 minus 3, two negative numbers, we add them, that's a negative 6. So when you look at those two slopes, 6 over 5 and 5 over negative 6, that right there equals negative 1. Therefore, slope 1 and slope 2 are negative reciprocals of each other, which means that the lines should be perpendicular. Sorry. So let's go ahead and how about you work this one out. Now remember, your options are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So go ahead and take some time to do this. Make sure you're working it out on your own before the solution pops up. So I'll go ahead and label them. 4 minus 0, 3 minus 1. So 4 minus 0 is 4. 3 minus 1 is 2. So that is a slope of 2. That's for line 1. Now for line 2, let's go ahead and see x1, y1, x2, y2. That would be 5 minus 6, which gives me something right now, and 22 minus 24. So 5 minus 6 is a negative 1, and 22 minus 24 is a negative 2. Now a negative divided by a negative should be a positive, so this reduces to a positive 1/2. Now looking at those two slopes, are they reciprocals of each other? Yes. But are they negative reciprocal of each other? No, they're not. So 2 and 1/2 are going to be neither. So that would be neither. Remember, in order for them to be perpendicular, one has to be positive and one has to be negative. So now, go ahead and get your green books. Open up to page. So it is going to be page 18 from your book, which is section lesson 2-2. And you're going to work on 1 through 6, then 11 through 20. That should be 16 problems. It should be more than enough. I need to see all the work and the little paper that the substitute's going to give you, the line paper. So make the best out of it. This video will later be posted on PB Works in case you need to see it again. Make sure you work on this right now. Thank you.